Hey gang, my name's Arjun. If this is your first time with me on endocrinology, well, you're in for a treat. The embryology section isn't really the meat and potatoes of endocrinology, but I'm still here to make sure you crush it. Before I begin, as with our other videos, we here at First Aid like to ask questions. It's not because we like to hear ourselves talk. Even though you could wait the 1 or 2 seconds it takes to hear the answer, I strongly encourage you to try to come up with the answers to my questions on your own. It'll help keep you engaged and give you sort of an idea of how well you actually remember some of this stuff. So let's begin. The endocrine system involves organs found all over the body, derived from literally every kind of primordial germ layer. Many of them have unusual and highly testable embryology. That being said, most of our embryology is organized in the respective organ-based chapters. Most of it's in repro. There's stuff about the pancreas in GI, and some stuff about the pituitary and adrenal glands in the next section, endocrine anatomy. Here in endocrine embryology, we'll really just be talking about the thyroid. But after we do this, I encourage you all to check out those other sections to get a sense of the awesome diversity of the endocrine system's origins. So we'll really only go into detail about the thyroid here, mostly because I don't want to put the GI and repro guys out of a job. Our story actually begins with the tongue, which as you may know is born in 3 parts from the floor of the pharynx. The 2 anterior thirds from the floor of the oral cavity and the posterior third from the pharynx proper. But at the midline, where all 3 parts of the tongue meet, an invagination occurs. This invagination deepens into a pocket called the thyroid diverticulum, which eventually grows into the lobes of the thyroid gland. The connection is known as the thyroglossal duct and should normally be obliterated, with all that remains being a small divot found here, where the 3/3 of the tongue meet. You remember what this divot's called? It's known as the foramen cecum, and that's a highly testable point. So that's how the majority of the thyroid develops, at least the part that produces thyroid hormone. Remember the other type of cell in the thyroid, the one that doesn't really get any love? The majority of the thyroid is organized into follicles that produce T3 and T4, but interspersed between them are parafollicular cells that secrete calcitonin. These are actually derived from neural crest cells that are floating around in the sea of embryonic mesoderm. By the way, even though parafollicular cells and calcitonin aren't really heavily tested on step 1, they are pathologically relevant in that neoplasia of these cells produces one of the most aggressive types of thyroid cancer, medullary thyroid carcinoma. You can actually follow the progression and resolution of medullary thyroid carcinoma by measuring serum levels of calcitonin. Now, our job as physicians wouldn't be nearly as much fun if things didn't go wrong every now and then, and indeed, this is something they love to test. For starters, the most distal portion of the thyroglossal duct may fail to obliterate completely, leaving a pyramidal lobe in the center of the thyroid. It doesn't cause any dysfunction, but it messes up that snappy bow tie look the thyroid normally has. What may actually be a minor problem is if the duct remains patent and forms a cyst along its tract. These cysts are often the culprit in midline neck masses in the pediatric population. You can contrast this with what other common cause of neck masses in kids? The answer is a branchial cleft cyst, and these are usually formed on the sides of the neck. That's an important clinical distinction in step 1. The other important thing that these thyroglossal cysts do is they actually move with the motion of the tongue because of their attachment to the foramen cecum. It looks pretty weird. Finally, the thyroid may fail to descend altogether, which results in a lingual thyroid. Apart being kind of a weird place for the thyroid to be in, these thyroids are often hypofunctioning and are actually a pretty common cause of congenital hypothyroidism. Alright, we spent a lot of time on the thyroid, let's see what you remember with a flash quiz. Fill in the blank. Normally, blank is the only adult remnant of the thyroid's connection to the tongue. Go ahead and pause the video if you need a couple seconds. The answer is the foramen cecum, found in the midline of the tongue between the anterior 2/3 and the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. It's that divot that remains after the thyroglossal duct is obliterated. That's all for now. Pretty quick, huh? If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up down below. And as always, feedback is welcome. Thanks for watching. Arjun Iyer, signing out.